I'm a retired bank robber. AMA. 1. Did you have a mentor of sorts that you learned from? 2. Did you have a community of bank robbers that you would talk to? 3. If you could go back in time, would you have still done it? 4. What do you do now for income? Thanks. Interesting AMA. 1. Only the internet. I studied countless reports of other robberies that had gone wrong and people who were caught. 2. No. I never told anyone what I was doing. One of the main things I learned from research was that an overwhelming number of people are caught because they didn't do it solo. So I never let anyone, not even my wife or best friend, know what I was doing. 3. Yes. I still acknowledge what I've done, but the process and experience of going to prison and finding myself, as well as a purpose in life, has really made it all worth it, relatively speaking. It's hard to regret something that has turned into something so good. 4. I was working in the oil fields until recently. Now I stay at home with my boys, and I am trying to get a book published and turn that into some sort of career, if at all possible. I've been on a few shows, and people seem genuinely interested in hearing more, so that's what I've decided to do. Thanks for doing this. A couple questions for you. Here's the part I don't understand. All the banks that I go to have a camera at the teller pointed right at the customer's face. Was something like this not in place at the time? Additionally, did the tellers never put dye packets in with the money? Last question. What about your getaway was different? In some of your answers you say you planned the getaway and not getting caught very thoroughly, and you focus on the actual robbery itself in other answers, but not what happened once you walked out. If all you have is a picture or video of someone, that's not really useful. As long as I didn't make it to the news, I was good to go. And nothing I did was newsworthy because nobody got hurt and I didn't make a scene. No dye packs or anything like that. Getaway was crucial. I only robbed banks that were in parking lots or something like that with other businesses around. I parked my truck out of view from the bank so nobody could see what I was getting into. Could you walk us through the process? How did you choose a certain branch? Was there a specific time of day that was best? Any certain outfit disguise? What did you say to the teller? Where did you go after your escape? Basic outline. Stand in line like a regular customer, wait for the next available teller, hand them an envelope and tell them to give me their $50s and $100s. Usually this was written on the envelope rather than me verbally saying it. Turning around and walking out like a regular customer. No gum. No threats. No Hollywood drama. No mask. No disguise. Nothing. Just a regular customer. In and out in the same amount of time as if I was making a deposit. I generally chose a time of day when I thought the cops were on shift change, which was usually around 3 PM. Some cities actually publish that for whatever weird reason. I usually went to Chili's or somewhere to eat and chill out. Did anything ever not go as planned? Yes. The last one I did. The teller freaked out as soon as I turned to leave the bank. She started screaming, lock the doors, but I ignored it and just kept walking like nothing was happening. I got out before the doors were locked, but a guy walking into the bank seconds later already found them locked. He was pissed, of course, because it wasn't closing time, and he thought he had gotten there too late. He obviously didn't realize the guy who had just walked out of the bank and past him had just robbed the bank. How much planning did you do before robbing a bank? I researched for about 5 or 6 months prior to my first one. I studied mostly the things that people did to get caught, and I just tried to plan around those things. It's hard to know how people get away since those details rarely make it to the news, but studying how people get caught was incredibly helpful in knowing what to avoid. Once I did my first bank, very little planning was needed for subsequent banks. I never really scoped out a particularly location other than to make sure there was parking that was out of view from the bank. Were any movies helpful or are they all too unrealistic? Hollywood knows how to tell a story, but they don't know how to rob a bank. Why did you only want $50 and $100s? I don't know about today, but back then all of the marked bills, dye packs, and tracking stuff was in $20s, so I definitely didn't want those. And $1s, $5s, and $10s were such a small denomination that they wouldn't add up to much anyway. It wasn't worth the extra time for them to get everything out of their drawer. Also, if someone else noticed the teller clearing out their drawer, it might look weird and trigger some sort of response. Getting out a bunch of $50s and $100s, however, seemed to be the quickest way and drew no attention from other tellers. What made you get into bank robbery and what made you turn yourself in? Edit, word. Bank robbery is the real American dream. We make movies about it, and as long as innocent people aren't hurt or killed, our society loves bank robbers. Also, it seemed like a worthy challenge. I thought it would be quite an accomplishment if I could solve the puzzle and figure out how to get away with it. I always figured prison was in the cards for me, even before I was doing crime, so it made sense to turn myself in and get it over with. But most of all, I became a father and wanted to just do my time while my son was a baby instead of the cops accidentally figuring out who I was and taking me to jail when my son was older. Do all bank robbers do it for the challenge like you did? I've always wondered why after they get away with a successful heist they continue and always get caught. I think most first timers do it out of desperation for their own personal financial problems, but career bank robbers, in my opinion, do it for the rush or the thrill rather than financial reasons. Doing one successful heist just makes you feel that much more confident, and eventually people let their guards down and stop being careful like they were in their earliest crimes. For me, I treated every single one as the most important thing in my life, and I went to great lengths to make sure I didn't let myself get into a position to be caught. How was it the first time? Imagine it would be pretty scary. How did the police react when you turned yourself in? It was scary the first time I tried, but I left and didn't do it. I returned the next day and wasn't scared. It's not really something you can do if you're afraid. Fear gets in the way of clear thinking. The police were very professional. They sent the SWAT team to the hotel where I told them to come get me, so that was pretty shit your pants scary, but they didn't duck me up or anything. Once I was cuffed and cleared and all that crap, they all talked to me like I was a rock star or something. It was really strange. They asked why and all that stuff, but it wasn't like the cop style of why, it was more like a fascinated curiosity. Did you carry a weapon? And what was prison like? No. I strapped a hammer to my leg under my pants just below my knee in case I needed to break out of a locked door or something, but I never used a gun or anything like that. Prison was like church camp without the girls or weird counselors. I played a lot of chess and read a lot of books. I also wrote a lot, of course. Mail is the highlight of anyone's day in prison. There are some pretty bad dudes there, but nobody really wants any trouble unless you just really duck them over. There's always trouble if you want it, but it's pretty laid back most of the time. You learn the way of life pretty quick in there if you are smart. What made you want to do this AMA? Is it pride? Warning. I wrote a book, and a friend of mine suggested that I do an AMA on here because people apparently like this kind of sheet. I wasn't so sure, and I figured I had nothing to lose in coming on here to see what people would like to know. Ultimately, my purpose is to just tell the better part of my story about how I'm not the guy I used to be and that it's never too late to get your sheet together and put your head on straight. I was a real piece of shit once upon a time, but I'm not anymore. I'm very happy with who I've become, and I'll do anything possible to reach those who are walking down the path that I walked down a decade ago. So if it's just Q and AMP, 8 to 1,000 people and I still reach that one person, then that's good with me. How was the prison experience? Shitty and awesome. It was like dying, except without the funeral. I was removed from everyone else's life just as much as they were removed from mine. Mail became the only way I connected with my family and friends. Prison is lonely and depressing, but it's also a great place to really work on yourself if that's what you want to do. Most men and women waste that opportunity. Thankfully, I didn't. You say that you're retired. But I know a guy who is looking to put together a crew for a major job. This is the one you've been dreaming of all these years. Are you up for one last job? Lol, that's funny. But no. That's the kind of thing that'll get you on the news, if you're lucky enough to get away in the first place. So even though I'm sure that's a joke, I'll treat it as a real question and say a big hell no. Colon. So do you keep your personal money in a bank? If so, which bank? Mayo. Actually, yes. And they know about my criminal history because I went to high school with one of the girls that works at my bank. I keep a minimal amount of money in the bank for obvious reasons, usually less than $1,000 or so. I actually think my account is pretty close to zero for now. Bank of Texas. Colon. On a scale from 1-10, how fun was it? Scary? I don't think I would describe it as fun. It's kind of like 6. Everyone will use a different adjective to describe it, but none of them are quite accurate. It's just, yeah, no. It was scary the first time I ever went to do it, and I chickened out. I sat in my truck in the parking lot beforehand but couldn't calm down, so I went home and came back the next day. Except for that one day when I backed out, I never experienced fear. Would you have harmed someone if you found yourself in a position between that and getting caught? That depends on the situation. If it was just some random guy trying to be a hero, I would have probably gone to any extreme necessary to get away because that's a challenge. On the other hand, if it was a cop or a security guard of some sort, I would have probably let them win. Probably. Can you discuss your MO? Sure. Walked in the bank and waited in line like a regular customer. Whichever teller was available to help me is the one I robbed. I simply walked up to them when it was my turn to be helped, and I told them, usually via handwritten instructions on an envelope, to give me their $50 and $100. Was there a threat involved? Or you just said give me this money and they did it? No threat. I just told them what I wanted, and they complied. This is how it works in America because the amount of money a bank gives up, $5 minus $7 on average, per bank robbery is infinitely less than the amount of business they lose if shit got wild in a bank full of customers. They just want to give you what you want and for you to get the hell out of their bank. What's the most memorable thing that someone has said to you while you were bank robbing? One teller skimped out on me and didn't give me all I had asked for, and I told her, you can do better than that. She just shrugged, palms up like a little kid, and said, that's all I got. Pretty ballsy on her part. And it probably was all she had. It wasn't. She was being a really brave idiot. She also pocketed a $100 bill for herself. Needless to say, she got fired. Edit, changed always to also. Oops. Friend worked at a bank. She said if they ever get robbed, to look at the robber's shoes. They change their clothes, but hardly ever change shoes. Is that something you did? No, I never worried about stuff like that because I was always long gone before the police got there anyway. And nobody ever saw what I drove because I would always park behind another building that you couldn't see from the bank. When you were robbing a bank, was it intense or were you calm the entire time? I was calm and controlled, but it was incredibly intense at the same time. It's like having 6 while taking the SATs. You have to focus on both 100% even though that's not totally possible, and that's why it's so rewarding when it works. Did you ever actually feel guilty about anything you did? I just want to understand your reasoning. Thanks. I never felt guilty because I never attacked or assaulted anyone. Under the circumstances, I was as nice as I could possibly be to the bank employees because I did feel a little sympathy for them. I certainly don't regret the experience of going to prison and finding myself. Edit, grammar fix. Why did you turn yourself in? Copied from another answer of the same question. I always figured prison was in the cards for me, even before I was doing crime, so it made sense to turn myself in and get it over with. But most of all, I became a father and wanted to just do my time while my son was a baby instead of the cops accidentally figuring out who I was and taking me to jail when my son was older. How many banks did you end up robbing? I eventually stopped counting. I originally fessed up to one bank, but they didn't believe me, so I gave them 2 more. I did time for those 3. So what about all the others? Can't you be imprisoned for those anymore? I've done all the time for all the ones I confessed to. I'm free and clear. Are you and your wife still together even after she found out about the robberies? No. We divorced while I was in prison for personal reasons not related to my crimes. What do you want to say to dissuade everyone in this thread from going and robbing a bank this afternoon now that we know how easy it is? Or maybe you don't. Is it too late to answer this one? Certainly not. I would tell them to think about how they do it. Then I'd tell them to think of 3 ways that it might not work and how they would address each of those 3 things in extreme detail. Then I'd ask them how they plan to get away. Then I'd also ask them what they'd do if they were an employee or customer inside the bank when it was being robbed and whether or not their getaway plan would work against their potential strategy as an employee or customer. I'd poke holes in every answer they gave me, and I'd show them how ducking stupid they are for doing something they obviously know nothing about. Or if they had all the right answers, I'd tell them to go ahead and do it. I'd also tell them that the most important rule is never telling anyone, and then I'd call the police to let them know that so and so is considering robbing a bank because I would want to clear myself as an accessory before the damn thing ever happened. If they still want to rob a bank after all that, then more power to them. They're probably beyond my reach. What's the average amount of money you made from a bank? Not that much, honestly. Probably around $5k per bank. What did you do with the money that you robbed? I use the majority of it for charitable stuff like helping people in need or donating to worthy causes. I gave quite a bit of money to local charity that helps out the families of first responders who are held in the line of duty. How did your family react to this? They kind of didn't react at all. Some of my family were sad that I was locked up, and others just pretended it wasn't happening at all. When I got out, a lot of them referred to my time in prison as if it was something that had happened to me rather than something I had caused. What was your most successful heist, and how did you pull it off? I pulled them all off in the same manner. Stand in line like a regular customer, wait for the next available teller, hand them an envelope and tell them to give me their $50s and $100s. Usually this was written on the envelope rather than me verbally saying it, turning around and walking out like a regular customer. No gum. No threats. No Hollywood drama. No mask. No disguise. Nothing. Just a regular customer. In and out in the same amount of time as if I was making a deposit. $26k was the best haul, but they were usually more like $5k, $7k.